where liberty lives, ad hominem dies, and commies need not apply. I am your host, Jason. Today, not with me because I don't have a guest, is just myself. But I'm going to do this in one take, mainly fueled on autism and just my mind, to talk about someone who is very near and dear to my heart, a guy by the name of George Bruce Cortelyou, the 25th and a half President of the United States. Not to be confused with Sir Quentin Tremblay, the eighth and a half president, who is a fictional character from Gravity Falls. George B. Cortelyou was a very real person who history forgot about, and I'm going to tell his story. George Cortelyou was born and raised in Long Island, New York. His family was a very wealthy family. The Cortellyous, were pretty well renowned there. And he went to school at the Westfield Teachers College. At my former school, Westfield State University, is what it's called now. But at the time, it was the Westfield Normal School for Teachers, started by Horace Mann, who was a very um, anti-Christian education, really secularized modern education. But that's neither here nor there. He wanted to be a teacher, and Cortelyou trained in stenography, which was a newly developing field back in the 1800s. Stenographers, for those who don't know, in courtrooms, stenographers have keyboards that go really fast. But before the invention of the keyboard or the widespread usage of it, they used shorthand. Imagine cursive on steroids. And shorthand was a way of transcribing words really quickly. Like imagine if there was a trained stenographer sitting over here, this entire, I don't want to say conversation because it's just me talking to the world. This would be written down. They can write it like 250 words a minute. Modern usage for that is if you've ever seen a pharmacist prescribe medicine, that is one thing they often use stenography. Normally, it's either Greg's shorthand or Pittman's shorthand, but Cortelyou used specifically a type of shorthand called Munson's shorthand, which was an offshoot of Pittman's, specifically developed in New York City, courtroom reporting. Now, here's the interesting part of the story is where I'm going to spend a lot of time on this is his role in McKinley's administration. He first went on under Grover Cleveland's second term. For those who don't know, Grover Cleveland, similar to Donald Trump, uh, was another non-consecutive president. He was the 22nd president, then he lost to Benjamin Harrison, but then ran and won again in in 1892 to be the 24th president, just like how Trump is the 45th and 47th president. Grover Cleveland's the only other person in recorded history to have done that. Now, at the time, politics was very corrupt, and he needed a new secretary, a new a stenographer to take notes for him. And so someone recommended, "Hey, we've got this young guy Cortelyou in New York. Great, I want him. He's a gentleman." And so he goes in, and Cortelyou, obviously knowing that Grover Cleveland's a Democrat, he feels the need to say, "Hey, listen, Mr. President, like I wore out two pairs of shoes marching against you for Benjamin Harrison." And Grover Cleveland is reported to say something of the effect of like, "I don't really give a damn about your politics. I just care that you can do a good job." And Cortelyou, that was what he did. He was someone who was the epitome of merit. And so he went on to be Grover Cleveland's secretary so much that when McKinley won the presidential election of 1896, he specifically said, "Hey, you got to keep this Cortelyou guy on." So he went and was the assistant secretary underneath John Addison Porter, who is the main secretary, McKinley being the 25th president. And the funny thing is John Addison Porter did not do his job at all. He was the social guy. He was the type of person you'd see going to wine parties and being like, "Oh, I have the status." He was a lot of vanity Um, he changed the position title from uh, confidential or presidential secretary to secretary to the president. So this guy, Connecticut, just went to all of the parties, really didn't do anything. So by the time in 1900 that he had to step down from his position, Cortelyou had basically already been doing the job. And a lot of the things that we see in the presidential administrations now are things that are remnants from Cortelyou. He established a system of mail where on the top left-hand corner, or one of the, I think it's the top left-hand corner, he would write, this would go here. And so if something didn't need to go to President McKinley, if it could go to other relevant departments, it would be forwarded there instead of wasting time. He was an efficiency expert. He also was very concerned with security. We'll get to that later. And lastly, we wouldn't have a press secretary if not for Cortelyou. He hired trained stenographers uh, underneath him in order to have verbatim transcripts of speeches given by the president, so that way the press would not misquote him. And so this guy was a jack of all trades, really just running a tight ship and establishing uh, systems that existed long after he left public office. So he was the assistant secretary to the president, becomes the secretary to the president. McKinley is reelected in 1900 and starts serving out his term in 1901. His vice presidential pick, Garrett Hobart, had died, and so they tapped Teddy Roosevelt to be the next vice president, and they win. And so in the fall of 1901, September, McKinley wants to go to the Pan American Exposition. It's this giant gathering where all of the people like Thomas Edison and all of the inventors are doing and showcasing all of these great achievements that have been made in history. And so McKinley, for his part, he's like, I want to go to the Pan American Exposition and I want to publicly shake hands with my supporters. Cortelyou, alarm bells are running off. He's thinking, Mr. President, are you insane? There have been anarchist assassinations all over the place, heads of state dropping like flies in France and Italy and Spain, and you want to publicly shake hands? That is a huge security risk, and I will not allow it. Now, Cortelyou, being a quiet guy, most assuredly did not say all of that, but he thought it pretty loudly and quietly took it off of McKinley's schedule. McKinley puts it back on. Cortelyou takes it off. McKinley puts it back on. And finally, this happens 3 times, and McKinley just says, I have no enemies. No one would want to harm me. Well, obviously, President had the final say. So he sends a flurry of all of these telegrams out to the organizers in Buffalo. And he says, okay, this is how it's going to be run. There's going to be rows of security guards up and down this line. Everyone's going to be watching for my signal. When I raise my hand like this, and I do this, that is your sign to close the doors. Security are going to be watch on specifics. I'll stand here. The president will stand here. Really just planning the entire event with a keen eye of security because he's very anxious about the president's safety. And so the day of arrives. It's September the 6th of 1901, and he is sitting there, checking his pocket watch, his hands up, and people are shaking the president's hand, and he's counting down the moments to when he's gonna offer the doors, gonna say, okay, the doors are gonna be closed here. 5 minutes ago, 3 minutes to go. People are filing in. It's a hot day out, so some people have a handkerchief. One guy has it around his hand, and other people are just dabbing their foreheads with it. And everyone's really excited to shake hands with the president. Cortelyou's about to raise his hand when he hears bam, bam. All of a sudden, 2 shots ring out. Uh, President McKinley is down for the count. He falls into the hands of a Secret Service agent. Instant chaos. Um, Apparently, the guy who had a handkerchief wrapped around his hand, that wasn't just his hand, it was a gun. And he shot McKinley twice, and people tackle him to the ground. This guy named Leon Czolgosz, an anarchist. And McKinley, for his part, is like, "Go easy on him, boys." The guy who just shot him twice, he's like, "Don't beat the crap out of him. Like, just go easy on him." He's bleeding, raises a bloody hand up to Cortelyou and says, "Cortelyou, tell my wife. Be careful how you tell her." Now, Ida McKinley, McKinley's wife, lost 2 children in miscarriage, and so she was chronically disabled for most of his life. And to think, the first thing that comes out of McKinley's mouth is not, "Oh my gosh, I've been shot," but, "My wife. Don't let her know." She's afraid he was, gonna give her a heart attack if they said, "Hey, your husband just got shot." You know, McKinley's afraid that his wife is gonna die too. And so all of a sudden, Cortelyou is left to pick up the pieces. President McKinley isn't dead. Unlike Lincoln and Kennedy that people most think of for assassinations, he wasn't shot in the back of the head, he was shot in the stomach. And so all of a sudden, Cortelyou is the one guy that has to assume command. And for his part, he does pretty good. All of the best surgeons are brought to him, and he says, "Men, I don't know either of you. I don't know any of you." And they're like, "Don't worry, he's the best. These are the best surgeons in Buffalo." He's like, "All right, then, operate." And they're like, "Now?" He's like, "Yeah, certainly now. Is it best not to wait?" And so there are these 8 days where Teddy Roosevelt is up camping, and obviously he gets a messenger sent to him like, "Hey, the president's been shot. You need to come down to Buffalo immediately." Uh, And the surgeons end up removing one of the bullets, but they can't find another one. An X-ray machine is offered from the fair, but they decline it because, hey, McKinley's okay. So Cortelyou sends off the messenger. It's like, okay, tell everyone it's all set. Uh, McKinley was really interested to see how his speech was received. He gave a speech about tariffs and economic dominance. This is right when America was becoming a world superpower. But then McKinley takes a turn for the worse, and he starts declining and fast. So Cortelyou sends another messenger out to Teddy, who's now at the top of one of a mountains in the Adirondacks. It says, "Hey, the president's condition has gotten worse. Come down here immediately." And okay, back then they didn't have planes, so like they had to go like horse and carriage and then go onto a train. McKinley is starting to die and he knows it, so everyone is called in, his wife is there, and his last words are reported as saying, "It is done, everyone, God's will, not ours, be done." What a banger. And then requesting to hear his favorite hymn, "Nearer My God to Thee." And so M William McKinley dies 2:15 in the morning on, September the 14th of 1901. Teddy Roosevelt, for his part, is rushing down a mountain. The first line in Theodore Rex by Edmund Morris says, "Teddy Roosevelt became president without knowing it on 2:15 in the morning, September the 14th of 1901." And that's a really good book if anyone wants to read it. But for Cortelyou's part, our coun a lot of people, things could have been a lot worse, right? You think about, uh, Kennedy and you think about Lincoln because shot in the back of the head, instant death. But for James Garfield and William McKinley, they lasted longer. McKinley lasted about 8 days. And honestly, if they had insisted upon using an X-ray machine, he would have been alive. He has the unfortunate, place in history to being, the guy who came right before Teddy Roosevelt. And so after everyone seems to, overlook William McKinley, but he was very well beloved by a lot of people. Including Senator Mark Hanna. He was sort of the guy pulling the strings in Ohio politics at the time. And normally he's really, stoic, but, he comes and he's like, Mr. President, Mr. President, and he sees his dead body. And he's like, "William, William," and he breaks down crying at the guy's bed. I mean, this is really terrible stuff, even though it's over 120 years ago. Um, so William McKinley is dead. And there were these 8 days where he was in surgery, where for all intents and purposes, Cortelyou was the president. And now the thing is that everyone would point to that and be like, "Oh yeah, Cortelyou is an acting president." Yeah, sure. But I always give him the title of 25th and a half because as secretary and things he would go on to do later, he did a lot of things that would still impact us today. He took over, um, he continued being a secretary in Teddy Roosevelt's administration. He went on to be the first Secretary of Commerce and Labor, back before they separated it into two different departments. He was the head of the RNC to get Teddy Roosevelt reelected in 1904. He was the Postmaster General and the Secretary of the Treasury during the Panic of 1907. But I always like him as the 25th and a half president because he never ran for office. He never took any oaths, but when the country shook, he held it steady. He did his duty. And in 1909, when he left politics, he became the president of Consolidated Edison Gas Company and basically was just president of that company for 26 years. And then he died, and history forgot about him. And that's the saddest part of it all. You can find George Cortelyou on footnotes of history books, and very seldom is he ever written about in his own right. There are only about 4 different things that I've found that really, dress him substantially. The first and my favorite is a book published in 1979, The Shadow Presidents: The Secret History of Chief Executives and Their Top Aides by Michael Medved. That gave a very, potent, probably the strongest biography that I've seen of him. There are 2 doctoral dissertations. Robin Gibbs, Merit First, Politics Afterwards, George Bruce Cortelyou's Role in Theodore Roosevelt's Administration. It's a 1962 dissertation by Robin Gibbs from Hunter College. Benjamin Temple Ford, A Duty to Serve, The Governmental Career of George Bruce Cortelyou, published in 1963. That is a Columbia University dissertation. And lastly, this one I don't even consider to be a real biography, but the only reason I'm including it is because it calls itself a biography. It's by Charles Penrose, George B. Cortelyou, 1862 to 1940, The Briefest Biography of a Great American. And it was just a speech given at a Newcomen Society meeting that was later published. It's only like 40 something pages. I don't even consider it a biography, but it says it's the briefest biography, so that's the only reason I'm concluding it. Elsewise, Cortelyou is always written about in the context of people he served under. You can read books about Grover Cleveland, William McKinley, and Teddy Roosevelt, and depending on the book, you have to go to their um the index in the back, scroll down to see, and it's 50-50 whether or not it'll be there. A lot of the things that he's mentioned in reference to is his, again, the McKinley assassination. There was a scandal in 1904 where someone had accused him of soliciting large funds and basically using the implication was that it was sort of a bribery scheme or a coercion of, hey, if you don't donate to the campaign, I'm going to go after you as Secretary of Commerce and Labor. But that was entirely BS and debunked by like everybody. It was just a mudslinging campaign to try to, not get Teddy Roosevelt reelected, but it failed. And then the other thing was during the Panic of 1907, he gave a bunch of uh, federal money as Secretary of the Treasury to I think it was the Rockefeller or JP Morgan, don't quote me on that, but that's often, repeated. So, a lot of the mentions you find of him are recursive, are about, like, these same 3 different things. But I think the part of it that I can't stress this enough is that he deserves better. History forgot about this man. And for my part, I'm in the process of researching for a biography that I intend to write. It'll probably take a very long time. because not a lot of the papers are digitized. You have to, go to the Library of Congress. So it's going to take a while. But I would encourage you all to think about your own unsung heroes. Who's the Cortelyou in your part of history, in your town, in your state? Someone who had a greater impact than is often talked about. Leave Think about that and put that in the comments below. Don't forget to spread the calling and let me know what you thought. Have a good one.